Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance, the one stop shop for all things woo woo, discussion, healing, and tips and tricks on how to get through life. Here, we're going to talk about things, trends that are going on the East Coast, the West Coast, everything in between. We're going to give you our magical experiences and hopefully expand your mind, hopefully open things up for you to think of things in a new way or to remove any fears, doubts, concerns, and to empower you to continue your healing journey in a really balanced way with tons of laughing and cussing along the way. So, with that, if this is your first time joining us, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you can catch us here most Thursdays of the year between like we're usually here like 5 to 6 on my end on the East Coast and 2 to 3 on the Pacific Coast. And if you have not been with us before, thank you for joining. If you've been with us, howdy. Hello, Bram.
There's our
So,
Bram.
Bram, sorry.
Yeah.
Hi,
Like
Colleen.
Joker.
Hi, everybody. One of my favorite Dracula tellings. If
Well, I
this
got to brag
is,
about this. I got
oh,
my first one of the year.
oh, you got a Christmas card.
I got a Christmas card from
Oh, that
Colleen.
reminds me.
It's from Colleen Richards. Oh, I love it. It's so pretty.
Uh, I gotta stop mail to the shop. That's what reminded
I
me.
I always intend to send Christmas cards, and I never do it. I have these big ideas that everyone's going to be surprised by a Christmas card that's got a handwritten letter from me in it. And hey, I was thinking about you because I love you and I miss you. It just never happens.
I mean, the intent is there, and the power of thought. As you know, in this show, we talk about that all the time. So, hey, it counts
Woo-hoo.
for something. Um, and that's kind of part of today's discussion. So, before we get into everything, if this is your first time joining us, I am Dahlia, one half of this magical show. And I am holding down the fort over here on the East Coast, doing whatever I want at the moment because I'm not at the shop, but I'm still providing energetic, magical support where I can and enjoying life. And I have a lovely co host with me.
So Dahlia's being modest because she doesn't know what to say now that she shit canned her shop. So I'm going to say that this is one of the most talented healers I have ever met.
Aww.
Her experience and knowledge goes far beyond as far as scope what I have ever attempted, and she impresses me every single time I work with her. So seriously, hit this person up for healing because you will be really, really glad that you did. You need to clean all the mess of this year off of you, and she is the one to help you do it. She is one of my healers that I go to when I'm in trouble. And all of us healers have to have healers. I mean, that's just the way that it goes. And she's my first on my list. Like, hey, what you doing? I know you're dying to do a healing on me, so let's come on, chop chop.
We didn't mean
So
to start the show with tears, but
no, she's amazing. She is amazing, and her knowledge of crystals is incredible. So it's not just the healing energetically she's going to do. She's going to recommend tools for you and things long term to carry that healing process forward. So connect with Dahlia, and she will get you hooked up. So what I do, I'm Katrina, and I am one half of Crossroads Occult at crossroadsoccult.com. And my gosh, we have had such an upswing in cleansings lately. Everybody's getting cleansed. So many cleansings lately. I've got this little, I don't know if you can see it behind me or not. There's an army of jars
oh,
back
look at that.
there.
That's
That's
nuts.
this week.
That's got to be like 20 or 30 jars over
There's
there.
a ton of jars back there because we're waiting for the crap from the egg in there to die off. And so many cleansings and people doing readings, and you can get readings from Dahlia too. This is the end of the year. They're wanting to find out, what did all this mean and where am I now and what should I expect coming up and how can I best engage 2023. I mean, we're almost there. I'm so excited. I did not do Coke before this broadcast, but my husband Eric and I, again, Crossroads of Cult, we do cleansings, we do personal spell work for people. There's been an upswing in that lately too. I actually did a cleansing on the healing ritual for a bunny rabbit this week. I have not done a bunny before.
Aw.
I've done cats and dogs. I did a bunny. I've done dead people. I've done all sorts of different cleansing receptors, and this was my first bunny. And I would show you a picture of it. It's behind me on the because it's still playing out. But we're trying to find a representation of a bunny because in a ritual you want something to ground the energy to the target, like push it right toward it. And Eric actually had the harmless little bunny from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So we like hit its teeth so it wouldn't be vicious. And I gave it the smoky quartz carrot looking piece to chew on. And we were just infusing Sweet Barney with all kinds of healthy energy. So yeah, he's feeling poorly. So yeah, as personal spell work, candle work, cleansings, readings, that's astrology interpretation. That's what we do. And we, like Dahlia, this year, in this important year, in fact, within the last, it was within a month or two of each other, consolidated all of that into home practice. And we're so excited. So that's what we do, and that's who we are. But what I have been long before I was a healer is a witch. And I got to tell you, I love today's topic because it's been just a little pet peeve of mine for decades.
Now, when you come to a show and you have two Virgos as hosts, you are going to get...
We should have called it something as a play on that. Virgo verse or something like that.
I mean, one of the things that I love about our sign is you're just going to get what you get. I mean, we are very to the point, and mostly free of emotion in that sort of explanation space because the clarity is what's important to us, right? And so oftentimes we will run into things that it's just like, no, so clearly somebody made that up, or this doesn't make sense. And so buckle your seats, guys, because we're getting on the bus for another one of those trips where you can't just go around saying what you want to say. So with that, as you probably saw, if you saw our pre-ads on Facebook, by the way, if you're on Facebook, make sure you click the broadcast so we can see your comments. We've got a couple of you guys in here, and thank you, Colleen, for the sweet words for saying that about us. So as you can see, just as an example there, we'll see your comments if you click on the video. Don't be scared. Don't be shy. Join us. And same thing with YouTube. Just go ahead and click on the video and we'll be able to see all your comments in response to what we're saying because we want to hear your stories too. So tonight's topic has a lot to do with what I think is a pretty common thing that human beings need, and that is validation. And I think that's something that starts from childhood, but we're giving it to you in a different context. So validation, like I said, comes, you get it in youth. Your parents tell you did a good job. It is a way of proving things to yourself and making things real, and there's this necessity for that in everyday life. But when it comes to spirituality and it comes to magical practices, there is a nuance to what we are doing that just has to be trusted. And so validation kind of is a shaky topic in spirituality because because of that sort of trust that is necessary, but two, it is such a path. Magic, spirituality, healing, it's such a path of personal self-discovery that it is very hard to create a standard that will allow you to validate certain things. A lot of times we can talk about, okay, well, if you're encountering these sort of things, you may want to be weary, you may want to pull back. But as far as the positive elements, the openness, the yes, you definitely had this experience, or this is working for you, that is such a personal experience. And unfortunately, yeah, you might look like the homeless person talking on the street corner to themselves for a little while because that's your personal experience and it's positive. You're not hurting anybody. But that leads us to ask questions that may lead others to ask questions like, is this really happening for you, et cetera, et cetera. And I always like when people do that, I'm like, why? If they're not hurting you, if you're not, if it is creating something for you, if it's waking something up for you, why do you feel like you need to validate another person's experience? So that's a little bit about what we're talking about today. And so I'm gonna let Katrina take it away because she had the experience here. So go.
Well, and there's a lot to talk about regarding this topic. And when now I've been doing this for around 40 years now. And during that time, I trained a lot of magical practitioners in different modalities of practice, including Wicca and just basic magical practice and folk magic and healing. And one of the things we like to start with when we're dealing with just what I would call new baby witches, they're just getting started. We do want to give them structure and we want to say, do it this way, be inside this box while you're learning. But once you have established and learned those things, open yourself up to the other things that come. So I want to say from the beginning that Dahlia and I are not necessarily discounting all forms of structure and established content.
No, not at
Sometimes
all.
you need that. On the other hand, sometimes, especially if you're dealing with online and social media witchcraft, you get so much that is about that's not how we do it, or it's about
Mm.
I don't think that you're going to find any record of that anywhere, so how is that correct? And that sets off this irritation in me that comes from many years of college classes of you have to have citation for everything you say.
Mm.
And magic is so personal and so nebulous that, you know what? Guess what? I don't have to have citation and validation and backup for every magical experience that I have. It's mine, it belongs to me. And, self doubt's another thing. I'm going to get to that in just a second. But the need for validation to other people. There used to be a time when you could not say that you were a witch or you were Wiccan unless you could cite your lineage all the way
Oh
back
yeah.
to Gerald Gardner. I mean, it was no, you are not a witch. And it gets very othering when we're trying to impose validation on someone else's magical experience. Now, that being the case, Gladys and I taught a practical parapsychology class on spirits, and we literally called it, Did You Hear That? Because that's what she and I would say in classes all the time and in our shop all the time, because our shop was enormously haunted. And so she and I were both sensitive, and we go, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that? What was that?" And so it became, "Did you hear that?" as a form of validation for, is this something happening on the physical plane, or
Mm.
is this something I'm picking up otherwise? Now, the hardest sell ever in the history of ever for anything supernatural is my husband Eric, who had never had what he perceived as a supernatural experience ever. The man has been witchy as long as I've known him. We've been married for 25 years, together for 26 years. And he would say he had never seen a ghost. He had never had any type of supernatural occurrence other than those wonderful Celestine prophecy kind of coincidences that happen that are very magical and lead you to exactly the place you're supposed to be. Those
Mm.
are the abundance. But as far as something woo-woo and otherworldly and ghostly, he had not experienced that until we moved in this house in August.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes. And I guess it was about 2 weeks ago, he finally admitted, okay, there are ghosts in this house. And it was funny because I sensed it. I felt it. It was very clear. I was telling him, look, these fuckers open and close my closet doors. They open and close my dresser drawers. They make crashes in the house where we can find nothing that fell. There are spirits here. Yeah, okay. So anyway, they decided of group mind to target him because he was in denial, and they just want to be acknowledged and share space. They're very benevolent. They just want to be here, cool with us. Right. And so anyway, what happened was, now we sleep in separate bedrooms because we're grown-ups, okay? And after many years of keeping each other awake, we found our relationship was happier and healthier if we slept separately. So in his bedroom, which is the huge master bedroom, on his nightstand, he has got a little metal tray that he puts his keys and things like that in, and he's got an LED clock. Well, he doesn't like to see the clock when he's sleeping. He doesn't like to wake up and show and know what time it is.
Oh,
so he kept turning his clock to face the wall. And he would wake up in the night and it's turned back to face him again. And
pay attention.
Happening, he finally came to me and said, look, this isn't funny anymore. You got to stop doing this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you come in the night and turn my clock around. I'm like, I want you to really think about what you just said in the context of knowing me and my ridiculously deep sleep that I covet and love, which is why I sleep separately. So tell me why you think I came in and turned your fucking clock around, bro. And he's like, okay. If you say you didn't do it, I guess you didn't do it. I'm like, no, I didn't do it, man. So then he started flipping the clock on its face to not see and it keeps getting stood up again. And last week he was having this time where he was having trouble sleeping. He was being very not anxious, but just awake. You know how you get those nights where you just close your eyes and you're like, okay, come on, any minute now. And he wasn't sleeping. He hears this loud pa-ping of something dropping into that metal tray right by his face. I mean, he's right here. It's his nightstand right there. And something clearly went into the tray. And we have a touch lamp, so it's instant. He instantly turned on the light and there's nothing there. So, and our cats are all locked up at night. It's not the cats, it's not the animals. And so finally came out, he's like, okay, there's ghosts here.
Oh, well, so we have an interesting question here.
Is that some people, validation is like the biggest success in the world. That's my whole story.
Well, and so I think what I wanted to point to with Rob, I think, and I don't know if this is your story, so clarify this if it is or is not. In my experience, when doing cleansings and blessings, I leave the good spirits.
Oh God,
I'll tell them, like, hey, don't fuck with my stuff, but also, if you're here for good reasons, you can stay. I don't personally like a blank space.
No.
So if I can have, the positive spirits, the my ancestors, what have you around, I'll leave them be and usually work with something like Palo Santo, or if I'm kicking everybody out, I'll be like, okay, you guys come back. So is that what was the case? Because Rob is saying, I guess he figured you cleanse your space.
I was devastated. I moved into a house built in the 1960s in Grizzly Flats in 2004. And Grizzly Flats is an old mining town that burned down 3 times. 4 now, because it just did. But I was devastated that my house was so sterile. And I had mediums come into the house and to the property, and they're like, man, there ain't a goddamn thing here. This thing is just neutral ground, which is interesting because all of Grizzly Flats is haunted to high heaven, but my house was completely sterile. And the
Interesting.
house I moved in after that, it was a place out in Shingle Springs, totally sterile. The outside was very active with land spirits, but there were
Hmm.
no spirits in the house. But like you, I never, ever clean the spirits out of a house when I come in. They were there first.
Hmm.
I'm coming into their space. And I'm not going to come in all, fuck all, you guys, you got to leave, and just shove everybody out until I know what's there. And
Yeah.
from the second we walked into this house, we felt very embraced, completely welcomed. Just nothing but, oh my gosh, the new peepers are here. Thank God. They were just very loving and sweet, but very there. And I'm never, ever going to tell them, oh, you can't be here. You can't coexist with me. I mean, if they're here, they were meant to be here. Now, if I move
Sure.
in and somebody's ripping shit, there's spirits here that are not obviously embracing the greater good of the home or me, or they're just nasty. Yeah, they're gonna go. But it's like people. I would get to know them first.
Sure.
And even if they're rowdy, I'd find out why they're rowdy. Is there something you're worried about? Are you afraid this new person isn't going to love and protect the home? What do they need?
Yeah.
And, it's cohabitation. These are neighbors, just like anybody else. They just happen to be in my house. And the ones that are here are lovely. I enjoy them. And so, no, I would not ever ask them to leave. As far as cleansing and blessing a new place, all I do is just if there's any feelings of toxicity in the house or areas that feel cold or uncomfortable or dank, I'll give them a blessing. When I moved into here, the people that sold the house to us really didn't want to leave. I mean, this is an
Oh.
amazing place, an amazing house. They're building a house in Pennsylvania. They were leaving, but there was a part of them that was clinging to the house because they really loved the house and put huge amounts of their energy into it. And so I did a release to allow them to leave peacefully and allow the house to transition to us.
Hmm.
But I didn't do anything as far as getting rid of stuff that was in here unless it was something that felt particularly uncomfortable. That's my long ass answer to what Rob said.
Well, and I think this goes into our topic of validation, right? So, one of the things that I've come across as far as validation is concerned is people validating each other's sort of negative experiences. So, if I love searching the internet for what are people talking about as far as spirituality is concerned, because if you're into human design, I'm a manifesting generator. So, my job is to respond to things. And if you're not into human design, it's a rabbit hole, and maybe set aside a section of life to learn because it's a lot. It's like I think we've talked about it a little bit on here. It's like astrology on steroids. So
I got a thing. Hang on. Sorry about
so
that.
right, it's like astrology and a handful of other modalities just threw up on each other. So when I went on YouTube and I googled spirituality, that's all I put in, and like all these videos came up. I don't know what's in my algorithm of people saying like I threw away my tarot cards and my crystals, and I was just like clutched my pearls. I was like, never.
My goodness.
I do declare, and
Heavens to Doreen Virtue. What has happened?
Right. And it was a little bit of that. And so I am not one to grandstand on any way of being and any way of existing. So I was like, okay, well, I'm interested. Like, why? Why would you do that? And the sentiments were a lot around the intensity of their experiences. And so how this has to do or relates back to validation is you have people in the comments that are very clearly driven by their personal views or their religion or what have you, that are already vehemently against spirituality or spiritual exploration, going, yeah, you see what happened, and then or on the opposite end of the spectrum of people who have had very pleasant spiritual experiences, going, no, you probably did it wrong, and there is no standard. Like, this whole piece of validation I love what Katrina said, about college, right? You go to get a college degree, and these things like that. um that's not even a validation that you have the knowledge or the ability to do what you need to do on your degree. It is the validation that you can take a class and perform well, and that you have a basis for the knowledge. But when you go out into the real world, that college degree isn't going to do much but open a door. It may open a door for you, and then it is up to you and your personal experience and what you do with your learning to create something real. And so I feel like that it's the same thing with spirituality. So as I'm watching these videos, I saw you know, a consistent theme of people sort of wanting to, I'm gonna say, because I don't have a better phrase, half-ass spirituality, and they got a result from it. One person
Mhm.
was, what did she say? She was, well, she was high, but she used a phrase, and I'm because I'm not savvy. I don't remember what she said as far as the phrasing for being high. Maybe she said she was baked all the time. Um, but she was high during all of her spiritual experiences. And what I loved is that I saw another YouTuber kind of come on and say, well, you didn't have control in the situation. You opened yourself up and spiritually, and you went in and you weren't sober. And that opens the door for a lot more if you're not experienced, because there's nothing wrong with, you know, if you want to toke or whatever, that's fine. Um, and then another person, their qualms with spirituality and why they stopped and they put their crystals away or whatever is because they were having intense spiritual experiences that they couldn't explain, and they just wanted that to stop. Meanwhile, they were saying that they could have these spiritual experiences without their crystals, but their crystals were making it worse, and this and that. And so it just soapboxes. So the validation piece of, oh yeah, that's why spirituality is this or that, or witchcraft is evil, or this is why, they tell you not to get into it. And nobody is here saying, like, first of all, unique experience for you, probably. I mean, there will be people that have had similar experiences. Invariably, we're humans, we share these kinds of things. But also, that's normal. That's normal. And the path to balance and true validation is what happens after. What do you do with it? It's not a question of, okay, well, nobody and nobody's ever had this experience before, and so it must be bad. No, that's not how that works. And you're not grounding that in anything, and therefore you're just kind of creating fear. And I think that's what drives this need for validation. Anyway,
I agree.
put
You know,
soapbox away.
one of the things we used to get all the time that just always made me laugh in our shop. Now, our shop was very witchy. There was no mistaking where you were. You did
Mhm.
not walk into our shop and think, oh, this is just a quaint little gift shop. You knew damn good and well you were in a witch shop, just the second you walked in. And we wanted it that way. Eric wanted to call our shop the Pimp and Pagan Pagoda. Okay. I mean, there was no doubt what we were doing. And so we would get people in there with wide eyes going, I know this sounds really weird, but, and I'm like, read the room.
Right.
where,
Look
where do
around.
you think I just heard 4 of these on Tuesday. Are you kidding? Oh no, you don't understand. She cursed me and this happened. That, oh yeah, okay. Get to the part about her. What are you looking to get? What's your outcome? What's your desired outcome?
Yeah,
And they
right.
just act like we've never heard this sort of thing before. And it's unique to them.
Mhm.
It is not unique in the world. And
Right.
that's what the internet did, is it made our experiences that are unique to us able to be validated by other people or rejected by other
Or
people
invalidated, yeah.
or invalidated, correct. And so it just, I think about people that got rid of their crystals because They got rid of their crystals because they had an extreme experience. Why did you pick up the crystal in the first place? You probably picked up the crystal to have an amplified experience. And then you
Yes.
got an amplified experience and you're like, oh shit, whatever will we do? I,
Not that much.
right,
Turn the volume down.
correct. It's not the crystal, okay?
Yeah,
It's you.
right. This is what normal is for you. And just because people can't come in and say, okay, well, this is, it should be this way, these are the steps you take, and this is the exact result you're going to get. You are a unique human being. Yes, you may look like another person or seem like another person, you may even do the same thing that they're doing, but you are going to get a completely different result. This is why, like, when people are like, yeah, I'm gonna go do ayahuasca and have this experience, and I'm like, yeah, you're gonna have your
Ayahuasca is going to do
experience.
you and have an experience.
you
And
know
like
um
you, I have no qualm with people working under the influence, but like that initial box that we talked about with newcomers,
mhm,
get good at what you're doing, because whether it's witchcraft or healing or whatever you're practicing that is energetic in nature, once you have put in the time to get good at what you're doing, and I don't mean 6 to 9 months, I mean, you have put in some long distance work to get good at what you're doing. Once you do that, you will be so in tune with your own energies that you will know when you need to smoke to take your energy down a little bit to be
right.
able to work with somebody. You will know when you need to eat some protein. You will know when you need to drink some caffeine. You will know how to self regulate so that you are in that ideal zone to work magically. I used to have a friend who was a big time high priestess that she would use all these euphemisms and say things like, oh, I was just working on another plane. No, you weren't. Your ass was drunk. I watched you sit there and drink peach brandy, all night long, and then you're going to give me shit about you're working on another plane. You're working on another fucking bottle is what you're working on, or I'm just communing with the gods and goddesses. I can't do circle tonight. No, you're high. You can't do circle because you're too high to walk.
Hmm,
you know Play games about where you are and what you're doing. That is not mastery. That is not how a spiritual leader should be behaving.
right.
But at the same time, you know um altering your experience with any type of substance is okay, as long as you are experienced you doing the magic and you're in tune with what your energy needs and it's not impeding your ability to work. That's my take on it.
Absolutely,
Says the most sober
absolutely.
person on it.
You need to you need sobriety. You need sobriety to give you a baseline. Like Rob was saying here, you know, there's an aspect of things like herbs, working with plant medicine. I mean, I burn incense for most of my sessions. And when I say incense, I'm using like mugwort as a base because it's super combustible, and throwing other things like rosemary, clove, or whatever on top. So when I say incense, I'm using herbs, much to what Rob is saying. But harder substances alter that experience. What I've seen a prevalence of is people feeling like, okay, well, I'm not going to have an experience, so let me do this thing to make sure I have an experience, only to realize that it takes them far beyond what they would have normally built
Mhm.
up to. And then they're just like, no, I did something wrong, something evil entered my body, whatever the case is.
Mm.
And we're not invalidating that as a possibility, but to blame the culture of what you were tapping into, or to blame the practice, isn't appropriate if you were not willing to take the baby steps necessary to have the experience. I mean, in meditation, for instance, a lot of people are expecting their first sit down in meditation with me or in
Yes.
other circles that they will just you know, astral project into the 19th dimension and gain all power and wisdom. And it's like, well, I can't even get you to breathe right, bro. Like,
Right. Yeah.
you got to do some other
Yeah.
stuff before you get there. And then probably by the third or fourth or the fifth time, that anxiety that you wanted to address will subside.
Well, and meditation is another place where that validation is amazing. We used to do a technique called Gestalt meditation, which was a shared meditation amongst a group of people. And so you would lead the people to a specific place as far as the meditation went, and then everybody starts participating as far as what they're seeing. And when
Hmm.
somebody says, you know, I see a rose bush off in the distance, and you have just seconds before had the image of a rose bush, you're like, yes, I saw that too. And so that sort of validation can actually be very exciting. It's not that you
Yes.
require that in order to be a fully vested practicing person, but it's fun and it's exciting when you have that kind of validation. And regarding, you know, substances, the last thing I would really say on that is, though we're talking about two separate, very separate subjects. We're talking about the use of, if you want to say, mood or mind altering substances,
Hmm.
and we're talking about magic.
Right.
And you don't mix those without knowing your reaction to either one or both. So you are not going to have your first ayahuasca experience and say, okay, while I'm doing this, I'm also going to do this ritual for this lady whose husband just
Mm.
died and she needs to try to talk to him. You know,
Oh my
no.
God.
You know, if you are experienced with the substance and you know exactly how it affects you, you can incorporate that successfully into your magical practice if you choose to do so. But you don't ever just go in blindly and just um, you know, work magic without knowing the effect that the substance is going to have on you.
Yeah, and that was essentially the case in this particular example I'm giving. They were high, they were depending on a friend to guide them through this magical ritual thing that they were going to. So they were high, they didn't know what they were doing, where they were going, why they were chanting, why they were holding a stone, like all of these things that basically amounted to them feeling like their life began to spiral after having these ritual experiences. And I can't invalidate their thought on that because I mean, any person logically would, you have to be there with them to say, okay, hey, this was the exact thing that, actually caused an issue. But there are
Mm-hmm.
definitely a lot of red flags there
Mm-hmm.
that to declare that ritual and magic was the cause of your life going in the direction that it was is probably not 100% accurate. Um,
Agreed.
there's a lot of stuff coupled into that, and this is
Mm-hmm.
where, so again, relating back to the validation piece, one thing that we're not going to do is say, okay, well, you didn't chant right, or you didn't get into the higher planes, because this other piece of validation that I think Katrina was kind of talking about earlier was this, like, setting the standard to say that this is what magic looks like, or this is what spirituality looks like, and if you can't attain this, then you're not doing it. Like, that doesn't exist in that hierarchical structure that Katrina had mentioned earlier, and that's a dangerous thing, especially
Mm-hmm.
when you have negative experiences, because I've experienced a lot of people sort of going, okay, well, if I didn't have their experience, if they were able to see, but all I did was feel, then I must be doing it wrong. And that's not it.
Well, and then we get into this, and I mentioned this in our notes earlier. We get into this emperor's new clothing approach
Okay.
where people will pretend or convince themselves that they're having an experience so that they fit in to the conversation.
Hmm.
And we really should remain very authentic within our magic, because magic is one of the few very personal things that really just belongs to you.
Mm.
Now, again, in my lifetime with magic, and still to this day, there are ridiculous amounts of groups and people who are happy to tell you if you do not do it their way, you are doing it wrong.
Mm.
And there's no in between. It's just, if you're not doing this, you are doing it incorrectly. And if you want to know if you're doing something correctly or not, post what you're doing on the internet. People will jump right up and tell you exactly what you're doing wrong in every way.
Yep.
And I personally do not usually put any of my spell work, like a picture of my altar or anything like that. I mean, occasionally I will if it's just my standard altar, but if I'm doing a work for somebody, I don't, because it feels like that diffuses the energy somewhat from what
Yeah.
I'm doing. But at the same time, I just don't want to hear from anybody. I don't care what anybody else thinks about my altar arrangement. If I'm going into doing a ritual for somebody, I'm like the bunny ritual, I'm pulling from things. I'm going all over my house looking for what supports this ritual. And it's a purely intuitive flow of work. So I really don't care what anybody but the client thinks about what I did. I don't need validation for that. But, all of us, as you pointed out at the very start of the show, are creatures of validation, and we
Mhm.
seek that. We like to have people enjoy what we do and appreciate what we do and feel a kinship to what we do. But yeah, that's one place that's not one of the places where that validation comes into play for me.
That posting of like ritual work, and it's hard to do. I mean, I myself, I do have an Instagram and I've posted pictures of my crystal grids and gone into
Oh, that's different.
explanations
Your
and
grids
like,
are amazing.
but
They're beautiful.
in the intuitive space, I mean, I've looked at some of your like your sample ritual work, or if we've taken a class and you've shown us different things, I've appreciated your work as well. But in the moment, like when you're building it, it's like, oh, you're swept up in the energy, you're trying to listen. A lot of people say I get mean when when I'm building, because I'm like very focused. They're trying to talk to me and I'm like, what'd you say? I'm on a different plane of existence. But and then at the end of it all, after a meditation or something like that, when I built a crystal grid, I'll just pack it up. And then I'm like, oh shit, social media. Um, you know, you're 100% right. We do not need that validation. Somebody will give an opinion. And I think to your point of like not wanting to hear from folks, everybody has this sort of you're right, you're wrong thing. Or, if what you did doesn't make sense to them, then they feel like they need to chime in. Um, and magic and spirituality is just not like that. I mean, if you end up um putting a clean pair of underwear over your head just to meditate because that's what helps your third eye open, like, okay, I mean, it's not going to make sense to me. I have a lot more questions. But at the end of the day, it's what gets you to where you need to be. And 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 if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do, you know.
What's fun is when you take a class from somebody you really love and respect, and on a topic you're not familiar with, and everything they're saying is familiar. You're like,
Oh, I
I've
love
been
that.
doing that. I've
Yeah.
done that. Or that's, that is another type of validation that feels really good when you have intuitively drawn from the air something that you didn't know before, and then you later find out that's a thing. I love that. I also love the validation when I see, and this is very simple and very specific to me, when I see what I would perceive as a muggle doing something super magical. Like, really exciting. This week, Sunday, Monday, our like toilets wouldn't flush and we had sewage come up the showers. Like, so much fun. And so Eric got a guy through a weird set of experiences, got a guy who came up here to work on Sunday. And the guy was a straight out water witcher, man. Like, Eric is in this plumbing supply house trying to buy a snake long enough to take care of this. And the guy who owns the place said, oh, this dude over here on aisle 4 is the best clean out we know. Just get
Mm.
him. His prices are right, blah, blah, blah. Eric goes over, talks to the guy. The guy comes out. He's water witching to find where the sewer line goes. And that was so exciting to me. I mean, just things like that, where it's like, this is a part of our human experience. It's not just because we get this idea of we're just weird.
But
We're
then
just
the
this
universe
member
comes
society
in
that's super
to
weird.
validate that magic is real through a muggle in your
Yeah,
life, just to be
I
like, "Hey,
love it.
Katrina, you know,
Shit like
what's."
that just sets me on fire. I love that stuff. And, it was literally shit, that brought that to me. So it was pretty exciting that my payoff, and, the guy's price was amazing. He came out on a Sunday, but just to have that little boost was really, really wonderful.
Well, and on that topic of validation, Rob here has another example of why posting work is a challenge and why I'm not into it either. I do believe that the internet is a very powerful place. You've brought this up with um like how social media is like a witch's playground because of all the photos and how easy it is to gain access to a person's life because they're not thinking about what they're posting. They're just throwing it up. And so if you need information for a spell, you just go visit their page. And it's, I think, a little bit about what Rob is kind of talking about here is if you are throwing up photos of your work, um, there could be other witches that are just like, yeah, I know, I want to dick around with this. Or, the people that call themselves praying over, oh, well, God be with you or
Mhm.
whatever, and praying that it doesn't work or praying that you find salvation or whatever. Maybe they're enhancing your spell because you have salvation through the work that you're doing because you're closer to God. Who knows? But that's another reason, like, this whole validation experience is what it is. I feel like we're talking about levels of validation. Like the validation that something is right or wrong is not something that we want to approach, and throwing things or trying to diffuse or hinder a person's magical work or spiritual work or what have you that you see posted online, not a space for validation. Going on their page and saying whatever you want, not okay. But then the
Mhm.
validation from synchronicities, the validation from the universe, the validation that just comes from within, that feeling that you get that's like, wow, this is magical, or wow, I feel this attunement, this oneness. That is an important piece of validation to hold on to. So maybe we're not needing to like throw all the validation out, but to be aware, I think, is the answer here.
Mhm. What we get a lot, and this is not just limited to magical work, I mean, it's all through the internet, are so many people that are using another person's post to pad their own ego or to one up
Mm,
or like it's a contest. And that is destructive on its own.
mhm.
But when we take it to a magical place, it's eating away at the energy of the magic. And so that's definitely not good. One thing I strongly recommend is if you are reading something that you have questions about, like why did they do this? Or I don't understand why they put the cup there, or whatever it might be, or what does that stone represent? There's one thing if you are posting a comment that is specifically to learn more or to ask a question. There's
Right.
another thing if that attempt is an attempt, a veiled attempt to entrap that person into saying something specific or to make them look foolish. It's always good to contact the person, DM the person privately and ask a question so that you're not putting it out there in the public, as far as certain things that you're confused about, or if you see something concerning in a person's work that, oh, I'm not sure that's safe to do that way, don't jump in and criticize them in the comments. Message them privately
Right.
and
And
say,
then
hey, I was a little bit concerned when I saw blah blah blah. Can you, for my learning, can you talk to me about how you protected yourself with that or whatever? Talk to them privately. Don't call them out in public. That's just a dick move.
right. And you may find out that, from that conversation they don't care.
Yeah.
Or, whatever the case is. Um I
Yeah, you don't have to marry this person. It's a conversation. And if they blow you off, if they're rude to you, if you're not satisfied with their comment, that has nothing to do with you. You can just let that go. You have the right to just let that go.
Right. Keep
But,
scrolling, as they
don't
say.
come up on them and be shitty with them. Just ask the questions, and that's how we learn and that's how we grow. And
Right.
if somebody questions you and says, "Hey, I was wondering about blah blah blah," explain, or just say, "I'm not really prepared to talk about that right now." It's okay to say that too.
Yeah.
But have meaningful discord about it instead of being an ass. If someone is posting something, there is an unwritten law that you are inviting commentary.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
really are. Otherwise, you wouldn't post it. Um, some people will
Okay.
post things like, I'm sharing this, but I'm deleting all comments. Like,
Yeah,
how?
yeah, I was gonna say that's my favorite, don't talk to me about it. I just want to put it on
Yeah,
the internet. Well, wait a minute. I think
right.
that that is a failing within our culture as much as the internet grows, as language grows, as we lose some aspects of our ability to communicate with one another, is that this like I don't want to talk to you kind of thing, or using shorter sentences, or not thinking that we mean the same thing when we are using similar words. It's one of my big pet peeves as a Virgo. I'm like, well, when you say that phrase, and maybe it's the over explainer in me, right? But when you use that word, do you mean it for how Webster says that is defined, or is it something new to you? And one of my favorite things to do is to find out that somebody is using a word in a different way so that I can learn more about them, as
Mhm.
opposed to getting in my head and being like, well, you must have meant this by that, and traveling down this long road of like, you know, you must be insulting me. No, wait a minute. Well, I mean,
Well, it
there's
also
some
goes
very
to the
distinct things that,
it
like
goes
if
to
you're
that
going to
Prince
use
of
the N word,
it goes to the
then you
Princess
know what
Bride
that
thing of, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
is. Yeah, right. And so if you're having a spiritual experience, if you're having a magical experience, explain it. Don't say,
Mhm.
and because we want to hear it. And then, you know, and then let's have a conversation about it, or what have you. So,
We
Val,
were sitting ar- we were sitting around a fire one time, and this guy that I didn't know very well decided to have this really in-depth conversation with me. He kept telling me over and over all these things he understood because he had tuition. And he's just going on and on about how he's got tuition, and my head is filling up with clamoring. You know, like, all of this because you paid to go to college. I mean,
that's like I was listening to like a mother and a daughter have conversation, and the mom kept talking about hooking up with different things, and hooking up, and this was like in the early days of hookup being meaning sex. And like the daughter was just cringing the whole time, and then finally like the mom goes on to explain that she just meant hanging out or connecting with people, not having sex with all of these people. And so I think as our language evolves, it's important to have these conversations so that we can back to the validation piece. We're validating our understanding of one another without the need to validate or justify right or wrong, but just to
absolutely. I love
open up
that.
to we all do things differently. Whatever puts wind in your sail, right, as they say. So
And that is the nature of how we learn. Now, when we go back again to the beginning of the conversation, where we were saying, oh, that's just something somebody made up. Everything we do spiritually is just something somebody made up.
at one point.
Yes. Whether no matter what path we're walking, if we're Christians, if we're Buddhists, if we're, pagans, whatever it is, we're doing something somebody else made up. and and sometimes we are the ones that make stuff up. All the prophets are not gone. I mean, all of the innovators, all of the great thinkers are not gone. They didn't just die and never speak to us again. We have great thinkers and great innovators now. People are always going to be inventing new ways to approach the divine, and I'm not saying that's bad ever. We don't need the validation of how can I put it? We don't need the validation of a number of people having done us this before us for it to be valid for us.
Yep.
And I think that's what this all comes down to. And I have seen, I mean, Eric and I invented our own religion because there were not religions out there that were fulfilling what we needed.
Right.
So I think that, everybody finds their spiritual way. And to borrow a Wiccan phrase, as it harms none, actually, that's Crowley, I think, originally. I think they borrowed it from Crowley, as a matter of fact. But as it harms none, who cares? You don't have to be right. You have to be kind. That's what
Right.
matters.
Exactly. As I'm teaching I've got a couple of students for Reiki Master, and we're going over. Do you teach Reiki Master class, or is that Eric
I've
that
to
teaches
be
that?
honest, I have never in my life taught a Reiki class. I've been a
Oh,
Reiki master teacher for many years, and Eric and I went through our classes at the same time, and he became the Reiki teacher.
okay.
And so I was doing enough already that I was just like, it's yours, baby. Go right ahead.
Well, so the process of attunements, right? In the beginning of my Reiki journey, I was just amazed. I was marveled. You go through and you put your hand here and you blow on this and you do these things, and it's all secretive because you can't learn it until you get to Reiki Master, right? And I'm teaching my students, and one thing as a teacher, I'm always like, make it your own. You are the new wave of healers. If this doesn't resonate anymore, do something about it, right? So I'm going through it, and I'm just like, who in the hell decided that this is what we were gonna do? Like putting your hands here and doing this, and as I'm doing it, I'm like, this is outdated. This is I know it's tradition. I will teach it out of tradition and respect, but this is truly outdated. And I think they just wanted to make it as complicated as possible so that they could say this is what it's like to be a master. And this is too much. We're doing too much. And so anyway, that piece of validation, like I see people looking for that piece of right that you're talking about, and I'm just like, we are it's about what's right for you, like you said. I mean, you summed it up well. But as you were talking about that, I was reminded like of the little structural things that we do, like saying prayers, or okay, you need to chant this way, or you need to do these Reiki attunements this way. And we're in a new era, we're in a new space, always respecting the old ways that came before us, but realizing that, if somebody was using mud as part of their ritual and you slather it on your face, there may be a new thing nowadays that can be used instead of mud, because mud was all they had, so
There's a
anyway.
big thing in folk magic, for instance, where they're always saying, to never use a lighter to light your candles or light your
Oh
incense
yeah.
or anything like that, because the ancients didn't use a lighter. And I thought, they fucking would have if they fucking had it. They sure would have. It would have been the sacred bic right over here.
Who has the Zippo?
Right. So I think, they've always said that a practice that doesn't evolve and change and grow is a dead practice.
Yeah.
And part of that evolution and that change and that growth is the energy that we add to it and that subsequent generations will add to it to keep it alive, to keep it contemporary, and to make it completely, functional within our society. Now, I'm all for Reconstructionist practice. I love, that sort of vibe. But at the same time, part of the reason we did invent cusp is because we had to have something that applied to us now.
Right.
And so I think that we all need to be willing to adjust our practices for who we are and what we're doing
100%. Guys,
without
thank you
validation.
for without validation. Thank you for all of your participation in the comments. We want to hear from you more. I mean, what do you find that you need validation on, that maybe through this discussion or through your own realizations, you realize, wait a minute, I actually don't. Like, I'm doing okay. Drop those in the comments, even if you're watching this on the replay. We'll see it, we'll comment. Rob had an idea to talk about spiritual work under the influence. Maybe
Oh, I
that's
think we did
another.
that.
What, you don't think we can go further? Um,
Maybe under the influence.
let's try to have the show under the influence. Man, Dahlia on wine is a lot of fun, but you will never see it.
Katrina on Kush is even more fun.
um but validation is a tricky thing. Don't if you aren't getting it, don't let it deter you. If you need support, seek it out. It's out there. Katrina is an amazing teacher. She has some classes coming. So excited. I'm so excited for Weather Witchery. Like I am chomping at the bit.
January, I'm thinking.
Yay.
Yeah, I was going to do it earlier, but the holidays crept up on me, and I think it's best to get away from them. So January.
It's a weird time for like starting things. I
Yeah.
mean, I feel that 100%. But we're both doing stuff. So tonight I am doing online meditation. You'll see more about that. I'm terrible at marketing, but we're getting better. And Katrina has Watch tonight, which is at the
Watch
Crossroads. You can get
tonight.
your
Readings for
readings. You get that
people.
one question in from
So
three
go
amazing
to
witches. Mhm.
facebook.com/Crossroads Occult, and we'll pop up on the live stream and do a reading for you.
It'll be awesome. It's always accurate. You can ask that, one burning question or ask what the week has in store for you. But check it out and or just participate and watch because
Watch,
it's
watch.
good laughs. Anyway, guys, we will catch you next Thursday here at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m.
Mhm.
Eastern, and
Also,
with
like
another
Rob did, if
topic.
any of you have suggestions for topics you'd like for
Oh,
us to
yeah.
cover, just
Yeah,
reach
we want to
out.
hear from you. Yeah, we definitely want to hear from you. So you can comment on Facebook, you can reach out directly. Do we have an email?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, we'll figure that part out, but you can leave it in the comments.
We're so easy to find on social media.
We are.
You'll find us.
So thanks for
I
joining
think
our
our
community.
individual emails are on the website.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Anyway, reach out. We love you. We'll catch you next Thursday on Crossroads of Cognizance. Bye, everybody.